What's going on YouTube? Welcome back. Thank you for watching. Um, you can kind of see. I got my little one. She's asleep, so I gotta try not to be too loud. Even though folks probably be like, "Why are you even doing this around her?" I'm on duty with my mom's mom. That's crazy. When my wife's asleep. It is 7:45 a.m. I was trying to knock out this video real fast. It'll be a quick one though. I wanted to talk about having a child and not, and literally it hasn't even been 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks later today. So, not like giving wisdom and advice, besides patience. Patience, and it will definitely humble you. So, I can't say humility, but it will humble you. So, humility comes with it. Well, it should. But yeah, I'm not trying to give advice. I just wanted to give kind of the quick story of her coming into the world and the lesson, the strong lesson, I guess maybe lessons that came with it. So she was due November 19th, which is a Wednesday. The Sunday before, on the 16th, uh, the morning time, my wife started having some symptoms. Um, so we skipped church that morning just to stay at the house, stay ready. And what's it called? So throughout the day, contractions are getting worse and worse. And by the way, this game is called Ready or Not. And I don't do too well during this mission, but I actually tried to record this while while doing this, playing the game, this gameplay I was trying to record, but it didn't work out. Uh, so I figured I'd just record on top of the gameplay. Anyway, so yeah, and her mother-in-law is giving her little massages. She's trying to breathe through them. She's got the little app that counts the what's it called, contractions, how long they are, and the time in between them. So we're just watching out for that, until they get 4 or 5 minutes. And once that happened, uh, we drove down to the hospital. We check into the triage situation. They measure her, they do some stuff, and they're like, "Okay, you guys can stay." We were thinking it was going to be like a midnight baby that Sunday evening, but it wasn't. But we spent the night. My wife she started having some issues with the contractions, like they were starting to get bad, real bad for her. So they put an epidural, did an epidural for her, to her, in order to relax her body with the pain, so that way she could, relax and then continue getting ready to have the child, our child, the baby. And what's it called? And so we spent the night there. Um, she couldn't eat or drink, but she was not feeling. She could just have ice chips. And so her sister and her dude come in the morning time. We're kind of little bet, not a really bet. I don't gamble, but like a little like. I wonder what time. Some say 4. I was saying around 5. Um, so around 5 something, 5 and some change. Uh, they check her and see that she's ready, and start pushing. About a little over an hour. I think like an hour and a half goes by, and the doctor was saying, the baby's not coming down. My wife was not having the best time with the pushing. Um, Poor her for sure. I felt really bad for her. And so they're saying, the baby's not coming down. It may be best, or it is best to just do a C-section. Otherwise, it can do some cervical damage or some pelvic damage, unless it's like a similar thing. Um, because she was just sitting. The baby wasn't really coming down. She was just kind of sitting at a certain place, certain point. That yeah, if she stayed there, it could do some damage to my wife long term. And so kind of an emotional moment, deciding to go with the C-section. We wanted it to be kind of as natural as possible. And so I had to put on the whole hazmat suit, not really hazmat suit, but I had to put on the whole thing, mask and uh, bodysuit and the little things over my shoes. And so they roll her back to the operating room and they have me wait outside for a little bit, just praying on my prayer rope, asking for mercy, asking others for mercy, and asking others to pray. I mean, and they let me go back there, and they got my wife laid out on on the table, and the little curtain right below her chin, so she can't see down there, and I didn't look. I'm not trying to see all that. It's too much for me. And she was cold. She was literally teeth were chattering, and killed a civilian over there. I'm not the best hostage take. I'm not the best hostage situation guy. Anyway, um, what's it called? Yeah, and so I had to ask the doctors, yeah, can she get my wife's cold. Can we do something about that? And so they put a blanket over her, and tried to put some blanket over her hands, and then she's in pain, so I got to give her more, meds. Wasn't really well. I mean, I don't really know how it works, but I was like, I wish I would have taken better care of her, at least when it came to the being cold part. Um, and so they're down there doing whatever they do in the C-section, and then boom, I hear my child cry, but it was very emotional. I'm not a crier, but I was tearing up to this situation. Watching my wife go through this kind of unplanned ordeal. And it's not that it was an emergency, like, oh, if we don't do the C-section, we're gonna lose something, and she's this bleeding out. It wasn't that on 10, right? But just the fact that it wasn't planned. I don't know if dangerous, but just like a intense operation that a C-section is. Was definitely, it intensified the moment very quickly. Um, and it made me. I don't know if love my wife more is the right verbiage, but I want to say it definitely connected us more. It kind of pushed us closer, and I told a couple people this, but you know, uh, thinking ahead, I'm thinking, oh, when the baby's born, we're gonna be like, oh, baby, run over there. But that's honestly not what happened, because my wife's health and such, and or at least just the maybe comfort of my wife was all of a sudden went left. I was honestly more concerned about her than my baby. So when the baby came out, they 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 showed us, she's all bloody, grossy. But then they took her over there to the baby heater, and they asked me, do you want to come see her? And I was like, no, I want to stay here with my wife at least for a few minute or two longer. And I was like, wow, of course, in a dream scenario, the baby comes out and they put her on the chest of the mom. You have that moment, but there wasn't that, right? And so at the same time, I was like, I don't want to go over there and spend time with our child before my wife gets a chance to interact with her. So we spent, shed a couple tears together, and I'm right here. Her head is right here, so she's laid out that way. So I was just there with her, and they bring the baby over near her so she could see, and then I held her for a little bit, and then they let me. So they're like, okay, we're gonna stitch up mom, and you can go to the recovery room. So they walk me and the baby to the recovery room, and um, really honestly it was the delivery room, the same room we were at before that she started pushing in, and so um, I'm just there with my child, sending out pictures and stuff, um, and um, and the recovery of my wife has been very real. You know what I'm saying? lots of bleeding, and she could barely walk, and you know hurting to get, barely really couldn't get up out of the hospital bed or out of the bed here at the house without help. It's like I said, it's been 2 weeks and she's still hurting. You know what I'm saying? On top of the regular pregnancy recovery, C-section recovery, right? And so a big lesson that I learned was not that I took life for granted beforehand. Being stabbed before. Yeah, I kind of already learned that lesson. But still, with this, with all of a sudden C-section, all of a sudden operating room, you know, it made everything more real. You just see how real life is and how real life can get and how quickly life can get real, right? Um, and it definitely made me appreciate my wife more, and what she did go through was what she was going through with pregnancy, what she went through with delivery, and what she's still going through with recovery. You know, yeah, I mean, I understand that. Like I said before, I'm thinking, maybe the child might come between us, or it's gonna be an issue between us. But with this ordeal and it kind of bringing us closer together, it definitely, they say, spouse before your child, which maybe can be a hard thing to grasp. Maybe if you don't have a child, or maybe if you don't have a spouse, or if you don't have the type of relationship, it can be. I didn't really see how that was possible. Your spouse before your child, but with us going through this situation as a couple and her, C-section stuff, unplanned C-section stuff experience, I get it now. Spouse over child, within reason, right? And also, she was telling me later on. This is a bit more uh, against the establishment, but she was telling me how the hospitals, they're in a hurry to get you out, so of the hospital, so they kind of rush things along when it comes to deliveries, and so they broke her water, right? And then they were encouraging her to start pushing, so we're talking about it the other night. She's like, yeah, technically I wasn't ready, right? So I'm like, wow, so it's their fault. You had a C-section. She's like, pretty much. And so there's been some frustration, you know, because we were talking, maybe we should have stayed overnight, that Sunday instead of going to the hospital. But she was also saying she wouldn't have made it through the night with the contractions, right? Um, so it kind of, there's no right answer, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Is I just wanted to recap the experience, and all of a sudden having a child. She's definitely an adventure. It hasn't been overly difficult. I am working, so I get breaks. I do get some breaks. Well, I'm actually, I was on midnight feedings or late hour feedings this past evening, so a little tired. But what I've learned is, or what I'm experiencing is not so much like feeding or crying or the diapers, even though diapers have been an adventure. Um, it hasn't so much been the normal, the normal baby things. Excuse me. It hasn't so much been the normal baby things, but what gets us, my wife and I both, is the fussing that starts. If she eats at 3, she usually starts fussing at like 2:40, 2:45. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of, and that can be harder, at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 1 a.m., 5 a.m. When you're just trying to squeeze those naps in between. When she starts fussing before it's time to feed, that can be frustrating, and that can be a bit overwhelming. Trying to keep her calm, trying to get those extra few minutes of sleep. You know what I'm saying, before 3 o'clock. That can be I would say that's the hardest part, but the rest is manageable. So not that it's all easy, but it's a beautiful thing having a child. Uh, so I hope anyone watching rushes out and gets married first and has some children. for it's part of God's will for us. You know, it's not meant for everybody. It's not everybody's calling to have children, but um, I would say vast majority should do that and go to church, Orthodox church. Come back and see me. Glory be to God and Jesus.